Hi there, it's Michael Inglis again from the Mind Room, and today we'll be talking about athlete identity and what happens to this when we're unable to perform as we usually would. First of all, explaining our identity is quite simple. It's really our different characteristics, our personalities, and our beliefs of who we are or who we want to be. Our psychological identity is our self-esteem and our self-concept, so who we are as a person. Our athlete identity, of course, is who all those traits are as specifically as an athlete. As for you people as cyclists, who do you want to be as part of this identity and how you represent yourself as an athlete? It's also a social statement regarding who they are, so how you want to be perceived by others and how others perceive you. In the sporting context, we look for social approval from our peers as part of our identity, meaning we want to be approved by others, want to be accepted by our teammates, our opposition, our coach, that we belong in our chosen sport or the pinnacle of that sport. Stage of career influences athlete identity as well. So if you're in the early part of your career, you're still establishing that identity. It's not complete yet, but you're looking to build upon it. You're still looking for that acceptance and respect in the world. When you're mid-career, this athlete identity is well established, but majority of your identity is wrapped up in your performance. There's maybe less balance here. I find that one thing that counters that a little bit is typically people start becoming parents, they start building families, and that starts establishing a wider, diverse identity again. And in late career, they can go kind of one or two ways. Many of you will be looking to hold on to that athletic identity, but some of you are quite happy to let go of it and look forward to the next stage of your life. Factors that can influence athlete identity. There's 5 different factors here. The first one is second profession flexibility. So when we do have the flexibility to access a second profession or career or study, it actually binds us more to the athlete identity, interestingly enough. It's when we are restricted and we want to access it that we start becoming more detached from that athlete identity. And a lot of that is relevant to the club or team environment in terms of supporting that second career, but it's also that club or team environment that supports that athlete identity or how strong that identity is. Meaning, if you have been well established within a team or a club for a long period of time, it means a big part of your identity is also wrapped up in that, as opposed to one you don't feel particularly connected to. Also, contact with peers and teammates. So the more contact and the more friendships we have in that world, higher our athlete identity will be. The social recognition and reinforcement that we get from fans and media and different other outlets, they also establish. So when we get a lot of high media, when we see ourselves in the papers or a lot of online media, that will increase our athlete identity. Something that may not be happening right now when we're not performing. And same again with the elite athlete lifestyle. When we're traveling or when we're training and we're doing a lot of physical training, particularly as a group or as a team, that again embeds that athlete identity. Where right now that may not be happening as much. In fact, when you summarize these factors, 2, 3, 4, and 5 might be lower right now. So your athlete identity might be decreasing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, which I'll talk about in a moment. But because you don't have the same access in terms of your sport and performance, they won't be as high. Where the first one, your second profession flexibility, that might be very high right now. So that may also increase a little bit in terms of your athlete identity, but also your future thinking or planning about your next career. Over-identification. This is when we become so strongly connected to our athlete identity that it actually becomes difficult or unhealthy for us. So too much association given to one's athlete identity at the cost of other roles, and we see ourselves exclusively as an athlete. This can become harmful because it can cause them to lose a sense of the person or who they are, particularly outside of the sport. This limits them to believe that their highest value in the world is solely as an athlete only and nothing else. So, i.e., they can't see the value of who they are as a person outside of their performance. So if you were that particular way before COVID came through, this may be a very difficult time for you. So what are the costs of over-identification? It becomes so wrapped up in the game or our sport, it eliminates other priorities to keep single-minded, meaning we want to get really focused on our sport, but we got to forget about other things that were important to us at some point in time. And we lose enjoyment in those other areas of life because we've kind of let them go or we haven't prioritized them as we once did. These things can include relationships, it could be study or that second career as I spoke about before, or the typical hobbies that we have. We might have let a lot of them go, such as surfing or other type of sports that are interesting to us, but we don't ascertain anymore due to our performance. So being able to develop values and relationships that are independent of the team will broaden our self-identity. So we're looking to do a couple of things today. We're looking to how to maintain our athlete identity, but also broaden our self-identity. Here's a nice quote from Eric Cantona in terms of self-identity and over-identification. Um, Often there are players who have only football as a way of expressing themselves and never develop other interests. And when they no longer play football, they no longer do anything, they no longer exist, or rather have the sensation of no longer existing. So that's a nice quote of how someone becomes cling hold of their athlete identity and struggle to let that go. So how do we manage a loss of identity? As we went by the factors and different stages of career before, many of you might be struggling with a loss of identity right now because you're unable to perform. And that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. I think that can be both. But we must acknowledge that some will be grieving the loss of this identity right now. Things we can do is be autonomous. Recognize and notice the choices you have in regarding the identity you want. So yes, you might be still wanting to be an athlete, but what other identities would you like to have right now or access right now? Identify that other second career that we spoke about before. Use smarter goals to get the career and education goals you desire. Now is a really good time for that. And try and broaden those social networks. Yes, you'll have your teammates who you've got good social connections with, but now's a good time to develop that identity outside the sport to tie in some balance that you might want in the future. I.e., we can still find areas of play in this time and still find times of interest that can be just hobbies as opposed to be performance specifically. So now the opportunities for these other identities. So COVID provides an opportunity to develop our other identities in the world. It is a useful time to reflect or investigate other identities you want to be associated with, or maybe ones you used to have but let go of. I find typically socially, between family and friends, this is particularly the case. And being able to do this now provides us a better balance for the future. You know, a lot of the time we talk about transition at the end of the career and they haven't prepared well for it at the beginning. Now's a good time to have that preparation ready to go and establish that as opposed to waiting to the end. A little exercise you can do. What does your identity look like when you're not playing sport? So maybe list down all the different identities in your life that you see. But also, what are the actions you're taking to manage these other identities in these uncertain times? So what are the different things you can do? Or how can you play those roles or identities out in this time? So instead of feeling helpless about it, let's kind of be inspired by this and how other ways we can kind of access these identities when there's times we are less so as an athlete, but try and broaden and balance out our other identities. So really we're trying to look to preserve and build here. We want to preserve our athletic identity. So keep and nurture your current athlete identity. And in previous webinars, I've spoken about the importance of routines and keeping up that physical preparation and training as you are. So know how to continue to access the athlete version of yourself. This part's still really important to you, and we want to hold and preserve that as much as we can. But we also want to find balance on the other half, which is you as a person. So let's note these other identities that are important in your life. Explore various actions in building them up at this point in time. And if we do this now, where we are unable to perform as much as we would like to, this may provide a balance to our future of both the athlete and the non-athlete version of yourself. Now, this potentially will increase happiness and well-being in the long term. Thank you. I hope you gained something out of these 3 sessions. Please follow up on the website if you want any more information. You can access me directly, and I'm happy to answer any questions anytime you would like. Thanks again.